Good morning. Today we are going to begin a new poem, An Elementary School Classroom in a Slum. This poem is written by Stephen Spender. Stephen Spender was an English poet, novelist, and essayist. He concentrated on themes of social injustice and the class struggle in most of his works. He was appointed as Poet Laureate Consultant in Poetry to the United States Library of Congress in the year 1965. Spender had keen interest in politics, and so he declared himself as a socialist and pacifist. His work always concentrated on themes of social injustice and the class struggle. The present poem, written by Spender, describes the social inequalities which are prevailing in the society. In the poem, he describes the condition of the students of an elementary school which is situated in a slum area. The poet wants to draw our attention towards these kids so that their life can be improved and they may get trained to become better citizens rather than criminals. The present poem deals with the following themes: the paradox of education, poverty and filthy lifestyle, the picture of inequality, and a desire for freedom. Spender makes a frantic appeal to the educated and affluent sections of the society to better the lot of the slum children through education. The style adopted by Spender is simple and lucid, and it is dominated by the usage of similes, imageries, and metaphors. He has done away with the regular rhyme scheme in order to convey the effect of social disorder, confusion, and chaos. This poem is a perfect social satire and is taken from the book The God That Failed. Now let us have a look at the first stanza. The poet begins the poem by giving the image of gusty winds and tells us how these children grow up with pale faces, far from the lap of nature and the beauty of nature. He goes on to give a vivid descriptions of the students in the classroom. He compares their hairs to the rootless weeds. He then focuses on a tall girl whose head is weighed down by the atrocities of abject poverty and misfortune. There is also a paper-seeming boy, thin and undernourished, but with rat's eyes, looking for some food. We see one with a stunted growth, whose only inheritance, unfortunately, is his father's rheumatism. No wealth, ironically, but a disfigured body. Finally, there is one sweet and young, yearning to play the squirrel's game and to escape the drudgery of this classroom in the slum. All images of deprivation and abject poverty are beautifully described by Spender. There are some poetic devices used in the first stanza. They are alliteration, oxymoron, transferred epithet, simile, and enjambment. You may please go through the slides to understand them better. Now let us take a look at the second stanza. In the second stanza, the poet gives a touching description of the slum classroom, saying how poor and ill-equipped their environment is. The sour cream walls were perhaps painted with donations long ago. This further adds to the sad ambience of the poem. The mention of Shakespeare's head in an area where the value of education is minimal. The reference to such literary personalities raises hope and aspiration, which will never be fulfilled. The slum is dull and monotonous. It is squeezed and suppressed under the so-called civilized domes. The children here are unaware of the beauty of the sky at dawn. The poet goes on to use expressions such as belled flowers, Tyrolese valley, to show the natural beauty the children are deprived of. They spend their entire lives on slag heaps. Unfortunately, their world is untraceable on the map. They see. For them, what they see from the broken window is their world, a world covered with fog, suggesting their world is bleak and unclear. Their home is a narrow, congested stretch and a lead sky, which is heavily polluted and which is far away from rivers, capes, and stars. The poetic devices used in the second stanza are alliteration, repetition, and enjambment. Now let's take a look at the third stanza. In the third stanza, the poet calls Shakespeare wicked and the map a bad example, as in their life, literary training is a far cry. The ships, sun, and love symbolize the brighter aspects of life, whereas their life is in utter darkness. To reach the world beyond, they are even tempted to steal. This existence is cramped, foggy, and sometimes totally dark. They make a pathetic sight sitting on the slag heaps, wearing skin on bones and spectacles of steel, with glass like bits of bottles on the stone. The future seems blurred and their dreams are shattered. The poet goes on to say that their maps must be blotted with slums, which are as big or as worse as doom. The poetic devices here in the third stanza are alliteration and simile. Now, let us have a look at the fourth and the final stanza of the poem. This is a very important stanza, as all the first three stanzas have depicted and described the condition of the children in the slum. But here in the fourth and the final stanza, Spender is very optimistic. He makes a frantic appeal to the city authorities to liberate them from the existence of a life buried in debris of discarded waste, to break out these catacombs and see the azure sky, the green fields, the glittering golden sands, to enable them to educate themselves with all of it. And he uses a very beautiful line saying, "History theirs whose language is the sun. It is only the educated who can change the course of history." And hence, the poem ends with a very optimistic note. The poetic devices used in the fourth and the final stanza are anaphora, simile, alliteration, and enjambment. Let's summarize the poem now. This poem by Stephen Spender gives a vivid description of a school classroom in a slum and the children in the class. The faces of the children are dull. Their appearance shows that they are unwanted. The children also have gloomy faces and their heads hanging low in sadness due to being poor. They have diseased bodies inherited from their parents and they are victims of poverty. At the dim end of the classroom sits one child who has bright eyes, which seem to dream of playing outside with squirrels. He is different from the others. The walls of the classroom are dirty. People have donated different charts, images which have been put up on them. One of them is a picture of the great playwright Shakespeare. The next poster is of the Tyrolese Valley, full of churches and flowers which symbolize the beautiful creations of nature. Another one is a map of the world. To these children, the world is not the one shown in these pictures, but it is the one they see out of the classroom window. They are trapped in the slums. The future is dim and hopeless. They have a dark future as their options in life are limited and are covered with dismay. They are far away from the bright light of knowledge. Comprehending these pictures is beyond their ability. They hate everyone, and for them, Shakespeare is a wicked man. As no one loves them, they dislike everyone. The desire for love and acceptance forces them to do crime like stealing. The children are so skinny that their clothes are like a skin and the skeleton is visible through them. This is due to lack of nutrition. They have worn looking glasses made of steel which are cheap, heavy, and uncomfortable. Their chances of fulfilling their dreams and moving out have been further reduced by building bigger slums. Until they come out of the slums, they will never know what the world looks like. The poet actually makes a request to all the authorities. The government system which makes these slums is the cause for these people to live in them. The education system is such that it forces them to live in these slums. They are not given the right to dream beyond these slums. They have been restricted to the slums, and that's why there is a request by Stephen Spender to all the authorities to allow these children to go out of these slums so that the maps on the walls of the classroom become a reality for them. They should be taken to the green fields rather than the dim slums. The sunny, warm sand of the beaches and the bright blue sky will instill a hunger for knowledge in their minds. Then they will absorb all of it. Then these children will become economically empowered. And finally, the poem ends with a powerful line. It is, "Those who make history are the ones who shine like the sun." I hope you have understood this poem. Thank you.